Commissioner Rubenstein is absent. Commissioner Gotel?
Here.
Commissioner Gepner?
Here.
Commissioner Quam?
Here.
Chair Sandal?
Here. Next item is approval of the minutes of the regular HRA meeting of July 16th, 2012. So moved. Second?
Second, and I have a positive comment.
Okay, you may go for your positive comment.
One of the things that I asked about is that we've been getting a lot of subordination requests, and I asked the staff to quantify how many subordination loans we have out there, and they did so. And I thought they did it, John, on a green sheet, and I read it somewhere, but now I can't find it. Where did I see it?
Yeah. The 38. Do you have it?
Yeah, I
I got it
do.
right here.
And where's the 300 I saw? Or am I thinking of something else?
I think it's something else.
There are over 300 loans out there.
Existing loan.
Oh, it's in the body. I was looking in the chart. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approval of the agenda.
I move the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar. Mr. Devitt?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the HRA. For those in the audience, the consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and the recommended actions have also been approved, and no further HRA action on those items is necessary. Tonight, we have only two items on the consent agenda, and those are: A, consideration of approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended and related tax increment pledge agreement with the City of Richfield related to $2,985,000 tax general obligation tax increment refunding bonds, Series 212B. And item B, consideration of a resolution accepting monetary contributions for community development events and programs. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
And, Madam Chair, I'll move the consent calendar.
And I'll second it and have a question afterwards.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Go ahead.
And it was just a curiosity thing. It doesn't affect the positive decision I'll likely have on this. But this is a refinancing, the first issue is refinancing some bonds. And the state requires that you can't do any refinancing unless the benefit is greater than 3% of the present value. Is that why do they care, or why is there a law like that?
Why is there a law like that? I suspect there's a law that, because every time you issue bonds, somebody has to get paid to do it. And they wouldn't want a public entity just churning out refunding bonds where the benefit to the public is really small or minuscule compared to the amount of money that would be paid to the bonding people and the bond attorneys who would do that work.
But isn't that figured into the calculation as to whether you want to refinance or not?
Well, yeah, I guess it would be, but I don't know, Julie, you're a bond attorney. Tell me what you think.
I believe that the state law requiring that refunding cannot occur unless you get 3% in debt service savings, or you restructure the bonds to push out maturities to help the city out with debt service payments. So I agree with Steve that those restrictions are to protect the taxpayers from cities doing too many refundings. They want to have some sort of value to the city before they'll allow them to refund.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Call the question. All in favor of the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Next item, number 4. Mr. Devich.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sandal, members of the HRA. The next item is an annual presentation to the HRA regarding the annual tax increment district status update. Very important because we have a number of tax increment districts in the city of Richfield, and it's important to know what the status of these districts would be. John, I don't know if you want to make any starting comment, but I do have Rebecca Kurtz here from Ellers, who is all set to make that presentation.
Associates. Good now? All right. As I was introduced, I am here for your annual update on the TIF districts, and I believe you have a complete report in your packet. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm going to give some highlights, but if you do have any questions on something that I don't cover in as much detail or that I have not covered at the end, please feel free to make sure that I do address any outstanding questions. First of all, I would like to say that we are anticipating that the obligations outstanding will be able to be met by the HRA. The HRA does have 9 TIF districts that are certified, and we are in the process of certifying the 10th district, which is the Lindale Garden site. So it's been adopted, but the complete certification process will be done by the end of the year, probably in the next few weeks here. With that, there are 2 or 3 types of obligations the city has. For the most part, most of your obligations are pay-as-you-go notes. As a reminder, those are when the HRA requires the developer to upfront the assistance for the funding for the project, and then TIF is provided as it is received, so it limits the risk to the HRA. TIF is only paid out depending on the amount that is received based on the increment that is generated. There are a couple districts where there are GEO-TIF bonds, and then a couple where there are GEO-TIF revenue notes, but again, similar to a pay-as-you-go note, those are payments are based solely on the increment received, so to the amount or to the extent that increment is higher or lower, the amount of those payments will fluctuate depending on the increment each year. With our updates or the cash flows that we do annually, just as a background, we try to be conservative as we're projecting forward. We do not assume inflationary increases in the last couple of years. We also have not assumed decreases, but basically what we're saying is we do hope to be conservative by not assuming any increases in increment over time. We look at the current year's revenue and then project that forward through the term of the districts. The first district I would like to spend a couple minutes highlighting is the Interstate Lindale-Nicollet, or the ILN TIF district. This is your oldest district. It is a redevelopment district that was established, or the first year of increment was in 1987. It is required to be decertified by the end of this year, so sometime later this fall, we will be bringing forward a resolution to just officially decertify the TIF district based on the expiration requirements in Minnesota statutes. With that, a couple positive highlights are that bonds were paid off in February of this year for what we call the bonds of 1996. They were $2.46 million, and then also what we call the Candlewood bonds, or that's the common name, which was $1.63 million TIF bonds. Again, both of those final payments were made in February, and so the only outstanding obligations are for pay-as-you-go notes. That final payment will be made in February, but it will be made with the final increment that is received second half of 2012. So that will decertify at the end of this year, and with that, we will be bringing about $1,822,000 back onto the tax roll, and that's in tax capacity. So it will be a nice increase to the city's tax capacity when that district is decertified and those properties are at full value on the tax roll for 2013.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
these outstanding obligations will all be paid off, is that right? At the end of the year, or?
Yes,
Okay.
and just as a reminder, those outstanding obligations are pay-as-you-go notes. So where we look at paid off, or when we use that term, basically what we're saying is you will not have to borrow or loan money from another fund. There are several districts in here with pay-as-you-go notes that may not pay off the obligation as outlined in the development agreement because of a variety of things, including class rate compression when the state restructured the tax system in the early 2000s. In the 2011 legislative session, they made changes to the market value, the legislature made changes to the market value homestead credit, which affected the amount of increment generated off of homes, homesteaded homes, reduced the amount of increment or the market values. And so that did have some effect on market value. But again, on a pay-as-you-go note, they only, the developer or note holder only receives the increment that is generated. So if, for example, you have a pay-as-you-go note for 2.4 million, if it is a pay-as-you-go note though, and you have 2.3 million paid off at the end of the district, it's considered paid off because the city is not responsible for that difference.
So we don't expect probably to pay those off in full.
In this district, actually, because the note is going to be paid off in full,
Okay, thanks.
partly because their qualified costs were significantly over, they will not receive complete payment for all of the qualified costs, but the numbers per the development agreement will be paid off in full. Now, that's specifically for the ILN district. That's not the case in everything.
Thanks.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Oh, another question? I'm sorry. Oh, over there. Okay.
Over here.
Go ahead, Mr. Devich.
Yes, Madam Chair, members, before we go on, I want to make just a couple of quick comments. One, as you were told a couple of minutes ago, the decertification of the ILN district will add over $1 million of tax capacity. And that's significant because tax capacity is the basis on which, and I'm explaining this because I want people at home to understand the impact, what we're talking about. It's not about market value, it's about tax capacity. Putting $1 million of tax capacity back in the city is significant. And this is the payoff of a tax increment district for those at home who wonder, why. I mean, there's a lot of decision and a lot of debate that goes into every time you do a TIF district. And it's hard on the front end to make that decision, but on the back end of it, this is really the payoff of the kinds of good TIF districts that we've done in Richfield, where you have a situation like this. You've taken an area that never would have had the kind of tax capacity that this area has right now, and infuse that back into our tax base, which makes a huge difference for the city of Richfield. Second thing, I know that we're talking in, and we all probably understand this, but for people at home, the whole idea of having these outstanding obligations and pay-as-you-go notes, the only thing I'd like to say for people watching about pay-as-you-go notes is that those pay-as-you-go notes absolutely do not present an obligation for the HRA or for the city of Richfield. They basically just say that to the extent that the entity that put the development together, they have costs that qualify, they can get them back in taxes that they pay. That's part of the increment, but there's no obligation for the city, the HRA, or anyone else to make up that money, should that money not be generated by taxes. So I think that's the important part for people to realize. It's not like having a bond or anything of that nature. Pay-as-you-go notes, the way we do them here, does not put an obligation on the city and the HRA.
If I can, too, the ILN is the development part of South Richfield, which included Meridian Crossings and the shops at Lindale.
That is correct, yes.
And so not only did we now improve that whole strip along 494 in our appearance from anybody who drives by, we had the benefit of all the new shops, and now we have an increase in available
About 1.1 million, or
1.8 million.
1.8
Right.
in your tax capacity.
In the tax capacity to reduce what homeowners have to pay for their taxes.
Correct.
So, okay, continue.
Just kind of following up on what Mr. Devich just mentioned, the Gramercy and the City Bella TIF districts, I highlight both of these only because they were impacted by the market value, changes in the market value homestead credit. So with both of those, there are one pay-as-you-go note outstanding on each of those two districts. And for the Gramercy district, for example, the pay-as-you-go note was for 1.9 million. The City Bella TIF district was for 8.4 million. We are not, with the way market values are right now, we are not projecting that either one of those notes will be paid off in full. But again, because they are pay-as-you-go notes, to the extent that taxes are paid on that, the developer receives that reimbursement. The size of those notes are based on the qualified costs, and the developer was aware that they are assuming the risk on this. So from the city's standpoint, if those are not paid off to the 1.9 million for Gramercy, the city is not obligated to make any shortfall payments or pay the difference on that. And again, because most of those, or those two districts are predominantly filled with owner-occupied housing, the market value homestead change had an impact on the increment that's being generated on those. The other district I'd like to spend a couple minutes on is the Lindale Gateway West. You did just approve the pledge agreement as part of the consent agenda on that. And what I'd like to highlight is that there were bonds issued, GeoTIF bonds, in the amount of $3.47 million in 2003 to help with that project. Just last week on Tuesday, we did work with the City Council and we refunded those bonds. They've now become the 2.97 general obligation TIF refunding bonds. And there is a savings of $319,417 that was a result of that refunding. This is another district that we are watching because it is impacted with market value homestead credit. You do see that there is a negative cash balance on that. There is an interfund loan outstanding on this, and so part of the reason for that negative cash balance is that the interfund loan has not been paid off at this time. So with the changes in the legislature and everything happening, we're 9 years into this district. Our projections, we believe, on all of these districts are hopefully at a low point, but I did want to compliment and congratulate on the refunding or the savings of over $300,000 on that, and then explain what that negative cash balance is. And it's an accounting thing right now with the interfund loan that's outstanding, and we'll continue to watch this one as we move forward.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Quam.
On this one, there's a line that talks about an $1,100,000 loan from the ILN district. The intent was that $600,000 of the loan would be paid back from tax increment, and the developer would pay the balance. And then it says, under the current circumstances, tax increment will be used to pay the $1,100,000 loan and interest. Does that mean that, is this a pay-as-you-go that we would not have to pay if the money doesn't come, or did we actually pick up an additional obligation?
With the way this worked, there was, because of the circumstances with that district and the fact that the developer did not refinance per the expectations, it was set up to anticipate that when the developer refinanced, a portion of that would be paid off at the time of refinancing. And so there always was the 1.1 interfund loan outstanding. However, the repayment at the time of refinancing is not an option at this point. And so instead of having part of the loan paid off at the time of refinancing, the expectation or hope goal is to have that paid off with increment. And that's what we will be monitoring as we move forward.
Had it not been paid off by increment, we would have that $500,000 instead for something else. Is that right? The developer would have paid us.
The intent was, yes, for the developer to pay off a portion of that interfund loan instead of using increment to pay off that interfund loan.
Thank you.
Correct. With that, I also will maybe jump to page 15. Again, I mentioned that there were some districts that have been established or close to established but have not been certified yet. In 2009, there were 2 housing districts that are summarized here that we went through the process, and because tax credits were not received, the project did not go forward. We have not worked on or finalized the certification for that, and the decision was that we would hold off on the certification because if you certified it, you would start the clock ticking on the 26 years of increment. The thought is at some point we may need to come back and just take those off the list if nothing moves forward in those 2 areas. But at this point, if you did have a project come forward on either of those 2 sites, all we would need to do is file the certification with the state, and those could be in effect. And then, as I mentioned, the Lindale Gardens TIF district, we are in the process of finalizing the certification with the state and county, and we anticipate that the first increment would be received in 2014 on that project. With that, I am happy to answer any questions. I know I didn't go through everything, but I think those were kind of some changes this year and some of the highlights. But I'm happy to discuss any of the other districts or comments in the report.
If I may, I had one question on the Urban Village TIF district. That's the only one that you didn't identify the, by name, the actual development. And I just wanted to check, I think it's 66th and Lindale. My guess is that include Oaks on Pleasant and the
Yes.
Pines.
Yes.
And the Richfield Bank development
Correct.
area. So that would be helpful for future.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
thank
about
you.
that. I'll make a note on that.
Yeah. So, and the other thing of interest to people who are at home who might like to know, the TIF districts that were outlined in our report ranged from 20 to 25 years of timeline of how long they ran. That was the numbers that I calculated from the beginning date to the date when they would be decertified. And so it's long-range planning. What the HRA has been doing with the City Council's grace is to say, we will invest in the future, and at some point, it pays off. And eventually, that development provides additional tax base for the city to collect taxes and keep our residential property taxes lower. So, any other comments or questions?
I'll just add to that. As I looked at these districts, virtually every major improvement that's occurred in Richfield has come under one of these TIF districts. And as people compliment the community for having this improvement and this growth, we know that it would not have happened without this tool that we have that we use with TIF. And during the time that we're waiting for the district to be taken back off of TIF, we're still receiving the taxes that we would have otherwise received had we not done the development. But now, when it does go back on the tax rolls, we have so much more that we have as a tax base, which takes the burden off of our homeowners in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add, you noted, Chair Sandal, the time, and with an entering suburb, one of the challenges is there isn't a lot of green space for brand new development like you may see in an economic development district that has a shorter term. So you do a lot of housing TIF districts and redevelopment TIF districts, which do have the maximum of 26 years of increment per Minnesota statutes. With that, just as a point of information, all of the districts that have been established, part of our term in the or requirement in the development agreement is that it has the term, maximum term as statutes allow or per discussions and negotiations, but there also is a cap on the amount of increment received, and the development agreements are set up to be the lesser of when the note is paid off or when the district decertifies, whether that be per the term in Minnesota statutes or another one that's been negotiated. With that being said, a lot of these districts, if we hadn't seen some of the changes with the legislature, probably have a shorter, or would have had a shorter term than what we're now seeing, like I said, with class rate compression in the early 2000s, and then with some of the changes with market value homestead credits, it has decreased. Every time they've done that, it has decreased the increment, and so with the way the agreements are set up, pushed longer or closer toward needing to go to the maximum. But to the extent that there are changes and the notes can be paid off in less than the 26 years, we definitely have those provisions in place, and that's what we strive to do to the extent that we can.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to say too, we always have to look forward too to the fact that the economy will hopefully get better and the legislature may change some things in the future, and we can always hope caveat to that. I guess, I don't mind some of the use of TIF, and I think we've done some good jobs here. I always get concerned when I see some of the other cities who have used too much TIF and have gotten themselves into trouble. So I think it's always one of those things of, okay, this is a good idea. Where are we at, and where are we looking to the future, and where does this come through? And, it's just like right now, nobody could have thought that we were going to have an economic downturn and everything, and we still have a lot of tax increment financing. But I think that what we're doing in the future has allowed a lot of these developers to come forward where other communities are not seeing the kind of development that Richfield is. And looking forward was the right decision to do in these cases.
Okay, any other comments or questions? And I'll entertain a motion to accept the Richfield Housing and Redevelopment Authority Annual Tax Increment District Status Update.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5. Mr. Devich?
Thank you, Chair Sandal, members of the HRA. The next item is one that pertains to our Richfield Rediscovery Program. And here we're going to have a public hearing and a consideration of a resolution authorizing the sale of 7326 Sheridan Avenue to Andres Custom Homes Incorporated, and a contract for private development with Andres Custom Homes Incorporated for the construction of a single-family home under the Richfield Rediscovered Program. I'm going to ask John Stark to make this presentation to the HRA.
Thank you, Chair Sandal and Commissioners. The HRA purchased the home or the property at 7326 Sheridan Avenue and demolished the house in 2010. Andres Custom Homes, Inc., the builder, has submitted an application to purchase the lot and construct a new home under the Richfield Rediscovered Program. The builder has entered into a purchase agreement with an end buyer who will reside in the home upon completion. The proposed new house meets and exceeds the Richfield Rediscovered Program requirements. The new two-story home will have 1,706 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and an attached 2-stall garage. The home will have an estimated end value of $265,000. Construction is expected to begin once a building permit is approved and will be completed sometime in late fall. And I did put up, maybe the overhead camera can show the what the front rendering of the property would look like. And I believe either the builder or yes, the builder is here.
Yeah, may we just check? Mayor Gotel has noticed. Are we on the air? The light isn't very well lit.
Lit.
Yes, I believe we're on the air.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
We just want to make sure folks at home get to see.
Yeah.
All right, so there we go. Go ahead, Mr. David. Mr. Stark, excuse me.
That's the staff report.
Oh,
This-
that's all you wanted to
This
know?
is a public hearing,
Okay.
required to be a public hearing, and the
right.
builder is in the audience.
Okay. So does anyone wish to come forward for the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak?
Has this builder been in the city before doing a home?
Oh, we'd like to meet you if you'd like to come up.
Come up.
Yeah.
It's a public hearing. You can come up, introduce yourself, and say where you worked and your background.
And tell us how many more you're going to build.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are kind of expensive.
And your name, please?
My name is Dustin Endress.
It does.
And this will be the first that we'll be doing in Richfield. There are other lots that we're interested in. We just don't have any buyers lined up for them right now, but if we get more buyers, we'll definitely be looking to put them into Richfield. So,
What's your experience?
we've been building for 8 years. We do houses in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Eagan, Apple Valley. We've done a half a dozen this year already. We have another half a dozen ahead of us still. So,
You're used to like putting up infill kind of homes?
yep,
Okay.
yep. So we've dealt with Minneapolis too.
This
so.
is very attractive and it fits in well with Richfield. I
Yeah,
commend you on the
definitely.
drawings and
Thank you.
the house.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thanks.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the sale.
So you're moving the resolution to authorize the sale of 7326 Sheridan Avenue to Endress Custom Homes, Inc.
Took the words out of my mouth.
And go ahead, continue.
The, have to read all this?
Oh, yeah.
The, where are we?
Number two. Number two in your box.
We're going to authorize the execution of a contract for private development with Endress Custom Homes for the development of a single-family home under the Richfield Rediscovered program.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
I have some comments. Again, I'll give Richfield credit for establishing and being the first to do this Richfield Rediscovered program that has kept the housing stock in Richfield from deteriorating. And John, I'm confused in that the program keeps changing. At one time, it was 70 grand, but then you had to take down the house, and this is different because...
Yeah, really, there are two ways of doing Richfield Rediscovered. One is that the HRA staff goes out and identifies a substandard home, bring it to your attention, you give us the okay to acquire it, we acquire it, demolish it, and then we sell it for its vacant lot price, appraised vacant lot price to a builder with a homeowner. So that's the first method by which it could happen. The other method is that a builder or homeowner could go out there and identify their own existing house that's substandard and say, we are going to take on the costs and the headaches involved in buying that and tearing it down and building a new house in exchange for a $70,000 credit. So it works one of two ways.
Interesting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We were at a study session earlier this evening, and one of the topics we're looking at is obviously housing, and the discussion was move-up housing, and I guess from my definition, this is probably move-up housing for most Richfield residents. 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, formal dining room,
2-car garage.
2-car garage, living room, family room.
Beautiful
So,
house.
Yeah, so we're happy to see it. Okay, I will call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, Mr. Devich.
Yes, Chair Sandal, members of the HRA. Item number 6 is consideration of a request to forgive a new home second mortgage at 6321 Morgan Avenue. And again, John Stark is going to make this presentation to the HRA.
Yes, in 1992, Andrew and Patty Beggs purchased the home at 6321 Morgan Avenue through the HRA's new home loan program. The gap between the purchase price and the mortgage that the Beggs could afford was covered with a loan from the HRA in an amount of $25,000, which was evidenced by a promissory note and secured by a second mortgage in favor of the HRA. The promissory note matures and is due and payable upon various occurrences, including upon payment in full of the first mortgage or refinancing. Recently, Andrew Beggs contacted staff and explained that they were planning to pay off their first mortgage, but they did not have an additional $25,000 to pay off the HRA mortgage. The Beggs have submitted a letter to the HRA, which is attached, asking that the HRA's loan be forgiven and the mortgage be satisfied. In 2003, the Beggs refinanced their previous first mortgage. At that time, the HRA was asked and agreed to consent to the refinancing by subordinating their second mortgage to the new first mortgage. In the case of the new home program, The terms of the notes and mortgages changed slightly over the years from 1983 to 2003, but the mortgages have typically been due and payable upon the maturity. One new home mortgage was amended in 2008 to be forgiven after 22 years. In contrast, the HRA's rehab loan, which is transformation home loans, has typically provided a 30-year no-interest deferred loan that would be forgiven if the borrower remains in the home for 30 years. You know, I don't have the history of knowing why the new home program for affordable housing, there was no deferment, but in the transformation home loan, there is a deferment. I just don't know. And we looked through the records and couldn't really find a rationale for that. 11 of the 20 active new home loans contain a provision in the note that the loan is due and payable upon satisfaction of the first mortgage or refinancing. In all of those cases, the HRA has at one time agreed to subordinate its mortgage, thereby waiving the refinancing provision. Staff recommends the amendment of the promissory note and mortgage to make the loan due and payable upon the earlier of either the sale of the and transfer of the property or 20 years from the date of the amendment. I can tell you that this, on the face of it, is a seemingly simple case. As we looked into the language in the mortgage, the language in the promissory note is much more complex than we had anticipated. And that's a large part of why HRA Attorney Eddington is here tonight. So I could try to answer any questions, as could Julie. I believe the Beggs are in attendance. Andrew Beggs is in attendance tonight.
And what are the what makes this a complex issue?
The complicating factor was we, as the staff, went back and looked at all of the different loans underneath the program to see where everything was, and every loan is a little bit different.
Okay.
And the maturity provisions in the loan documents are slightly different because the program spanned over 20 years, so the documents changed over time. And I think what the staff is hoping for is some guidance about how to treat these requests moving forward, and perhaps simplifying the terms of these notes as they get requests, instead of having 6 or 7 events of maturity for a promissory note, just having 1 or 2.
And I would just add to that, what we're looking for, unless you tell us otherwise, is that perhaps however you treat this tonight, on this one particular one, would be a precedent for how we would treat others in the future, and it would allow us to bring back similar recommendations on other new home second mortgages if similar situations were to occur.
Comes back to the fact that we need housing policy, right?
Okay. Yeah. Did you want to speak to us, Mr. Biggs? Or you want to just listen? Okay. All right. I guess looking at this, I think I would agree with staff's recommendation to allow the Beggs to pay off their mortgage, but to continue our mortgage for either the period in time when they either sell or transfer the property, or in the alternative 20 years. We can always relook at it again in 20 years if we want to. But I think the benefit that they obtained by having this mortgage, once that's repaid to the HRA, could then be recycled and used by another family, which is why I would recommend that we continue. I'm willing to continue it, but I do think we should be paid back at some point. Mr. Quam?
I have a question as to how you decided to recommend 20 more years. That would make it a 40-year loan.
I don't know that there was any magic to 20 years. So if you have a different number that you think makes sense, I think.
And the original term would go 10 more years? Is that right?
Yes. Well, let's see. This was
That's
1992. Yeah, that is right.
Okay.
John, am I correct in some of my confusion is that these programs have different maturity dates? And are some of those governed by the funding source?
Not necessarily. They're governed by the language in the mortgage and the promissory note, and the language in the mortgage and the promissory notes differed from loan to loan. Especially in the promissory notes, there are these events at which the HRA would expect to get paid back, and on some there's only one event, and that's the sale of the property or the maturity. So 2 events. On others, there's a laundry list of events. And, part of the problem with this, I think, is we did so few of these. There are 20 of them. We haven't done any in the last 9 years. And there's not a lot of institutional memory on why they all differed. It doesn't really make any sense to me that they did all differ, to be honest. And part of what we're trying to do is have some consistency with these loans if and when
Why wouldn't we just
there's
make
an
it,
opportunity.
Madam Chair, why wouldn't we just make them all the same with all new home mortgages to be favorable after 30 years like we did the other program?
Because we're only one party in the contract, and we would have to, convince the other party in the contract that that was in their best interest, and it may very well be. We thought it would be better, like I said, to take action on this one and assume that over time the others are going to come back to us for subordinations, and we can deal with them one at a time in that way.
Mr. Kwong?
I would take it that this is just the second time someone has come and asked for it to be forgiven altogether.
I don't think that that's true. This is the first
Okay.
time that staff has spent as much time and diligence researching the language in the promissory notes and mortgages.
And we don't really have we only have one other precedent for actually forgiving a loan, right?
Yeah, and that was in the case where that was kind of extenuating circumstances where there was the homeowner alleged and the HRA agreed that there were some significant construction defects in the home.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I would question why we would extend the term. I could see the sense in subordinating, so it allows the homeowner to pay off their superior loan. But that if we leave it as it is, there's 10 years for them to work out whatever they may wish to do with this loan, and we could always take another look at it at that point if there was some other issue. But right now, you said you didn't have a particular basis for extending it to 20 years.
Julie, can you recall any?
Chairperson Quam, I had drafted the amendment with a 10-year maturity or a due on sale clause, and I spoke to the city attorney, Corrine Heine, about it, and she thought it might be best to push out that 10 years to 20 years. But again...
For what reason?
Well, I think we specifically were thinking about the Beggs situation where they were most likely going to be staying in their home for a long time, and the 10 years would probably be not sufficient for them. They would need more time.
Really, the intent was to say that they pay it off when they sell the house. But you can't leave it open-ended like that. You have to have a date. And so if we had our druthers, there wouldn't be a date in there. It would say it's due when you sell the house, period. And 20 years sounded like a good outside date.
And I suspect that you're long-term residents, you plan on staying here, correct, Mr. Biggs? Well, yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. A lot of us do. I understand that.
I certainly sympathize with, the circumstance. At the same time, we're being asked to set a precedent. And in law school, they say hard cases make bad law.
I remember that,
And,
yes.
and if particularly in the case of setting a precedent and a directive for the staff, the institutional memory may not be that good for somebody in the future when they look at this, and they wouldn't know the case circumstances that would have caused us to extend it to 20 years. And I would be more comfortable with, at this point, permitting the subordination and giving them 10 years of grace at this point, and then you just don't know. You can't predict more than 10 years into the future anyway, I think.
Yeah, and we did talk about suggesting that the new maturity date, we just get rid of all the other triggers, and it just be the 30 years or the sale of the property. The issue that came up with that, if you look at the staff report, the new home mortgages were from 1983 to 2003, and so the earliest ones from 1983 are going to be due up next year. And so if the precedent is, these are the original 30 years, when people come to us next year and say, I bought this home, got this loan because I was in a financial situation, and their financial situation may or may not have gotten better, our answer would be, well, it's due now, based on the precedent of tying it to the original 30 years. So that's just more information.
Well, I can see the argument on both sides.
I can.
I mean, they're
It's
both
not
good
easy.
arguments.
And I'm not intending to argue.
It's
No, I don't mean
not.
it negatively. I mean, just, I can see both sides of the issue. Do we have a motion? Does someone want to propose something?
Well, just to talk a little bit more, if I may.
Okay.
I can certainly see the argument on both sides, too. This, I suspect, was a loan we made. We don't still make them, is that right?
No, we really changed how the program
Okay.
works, so we don't.
Not because we were getting increased tax base or something like that, like we do from transformation homes or from Richfield Rediscovered, or even our new loans for homes that need rehabilitation. It was really just to help people get into the homes based on their financial circumstances, as I understand it. Is that right?
Well, I think it's probably both.
Okay.
For example, we talked about the Richfield Rediscovered credit program. You put a $70,000 credit in there, and what you get out of it is a homeowner invested in the community, perhaps has kids here, and increased property values.
Right.
With the new home program, these mortgages are certainly, I don't believe any of them are as much as $70,000, and you get the same things out of them.
But the house was built, is that right?
Right, the house was built.
Okay.
And it was
so that is a different situation. One alternative would be to go the other way and just say we don't put a limit on it, and we just simply make them due when the house is sold.
I think we came to the conclusion that legally you can't do that.
You
It has
legally
to have
can't do that?
Yep, it has to
Okay.
have some
Since the
date.
program has changed significantly, and we're just going to be dealing with a few of these homes, would we really be setting a precedence by making a change in just this one?
Well, I think we're probably going to end up dealing with maybe not all 20 of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if we end up dealing with 10 of them
Okay, on
over
a
the
case-by-case
next few
basis.
years.
And if I may add, I think that we had put the 10-year and 20-year maturity date so that we would have a solid date. But I also think that if we record the amendment to the mortgage and it specifically says that the mortgage is due on sale, that does provide a sufficient notice to people that the mortgage is due on that date. So I think it would be a valid way to amend these mortgages. But I can certainly double check that with City Attorney Heine.
Very good.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood what your point was.
Well, I think that if we had a recorded document against the property that specifically states that the mortgage, whatever it is due on sale, that would give everyone proper notice of when that, that mortgage was due and payable, the loan was due and payable. So I think we could probably use that as a standard revision, and as Chairperson, or excuse me, Commissioner Gotel had mentioned.
So you're saying we do not need a specific length of time?
I believe that to be true. I would want to, City Attorney Heine is a real estate specialist, so I'd want to check with her on that.
So do we want to continue this item to?
Well, I'm not sure we want to continue that because the Beggs, I think, are in a situation where they've been waiting quite a long time to be able to pay off their first mortgage.
But what comes back if Corinne Heine says that's not possible?
I would suggest that we move forward with the amendment that it would be due and payable on sale of the property. And if we determine that that's not sufficient notice under the statutes relating to mortgages, that we would add a time period, like a 10-year or a 20-year maturity date.
I guess I would feel more comfortable having that in the motion. Pick one.
I'll make a motion that we will, let's see, how is this worded, if I can.
Direct staff.
Direct staff to amend the promissory note and mortgage related to the new home loan provided to Andrea and Patty Beggs of 6321 Morgan Avenue, so that the loan is due and payable upon the earlier of the sale or transfer of the property, and I would amend it to 10 years from the date of the amendment, and consider establishing a policy whereby future similar requests are addressed in the same manner. Well, I'll make that motion, and if there's a second, I'll discuss why.
Second.
Okay. That allows let's see, but it says, maybe I said it wrong. How would we do it so that it had that as a backup date to word it correctly?
I would word the motion that the mortgage be amended so that the loan is due upon sale. And if the city attorney advises otherwise, that the mortgage be amended so that it's either due upon sale or 10 years following the amendment, whichever is earliest.
What she said. I'll amend my motion to that.
As the seconder, accept that?
Thank you.
I accept that.
Okay. And it is sale or transfer, because it's possible for people to die and that results in a transfer, but they're not really selling the property.
Okay.
All right, so we have a friendly amendment which has been accepted by the seconder. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I would just add that if it turns out that the term cannot be left out, as we've talked about, I think our discussion has indicated that if it creates hardship on the homeowner, I would be willing to give it some further
Oh,
consideration.
yeah, sure. We would revisit this for sure.
It's not a motion, I'm just stating it as something that I would
Certainly they can
indicate.
come back in 10 years if,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Okay. And we did call that question, right?
Yep, and it's already voted.
Approved, okay. Item number 7.
Yes,
Mr.
this is the consideration of a proposed settlement of a HRA deferred loan mortgage made by the owner of 1709 72nd Street West in the amount of $8,249.95. By way of background, on February 10th, 1987, The owner of 1709 72nd Street West received a Federal Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, deferred loan for $8,249.95 through the Richfield HRA. The terms of the loan required the homeowner to repay the loan in full at no interest upon sale of the property. If the original owner remains in the home, the loan is fully forgiven after 30 years. Due to financial and personal reasons, the owner is now attempting to sell the property to avoid foreclosure. The owner recently received an offer for $147,000. After paying off the first mortgage, home equity line of credit, fees and commissions, closing costs, and past bills, the settlement leaves the homeowners approximately $8,200 short of covering all costs. Forgiveness of the HRA lien would all but eliminate the shortage. If the HRA and the homeowner cannot reach an agreement according to the payoff of the HRA mortgage, this property is likely to go into foreclosure. As a lien holder, the HRA would have the opportunity to redeem this foreclosure. To do so, however, the HRA would either have to satisfy the outstanding mortgages or negotiate a settlement with those lien holders. And if we didn't do that, if we ended up in second position and didn't act to redeem, we would lose the mortgage altogether. So
We're essentially losing it.
that's the situation. The maturity date would be 2017 under normal circumstances. So if the homeowners had remained in this house for another 5 years, then this would have been forgiven. And I do believe that the homeowners are here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. If you have any questions of them.
Okay. I have a question. Is this considered, is this a short sale then? Is that how you've been working on it? Or it just turns out that the numbers round out quite well?
And just for the public record, if
Yeah,
you
you wanna
could
come up?
approach the
Yeah, I'm
microphone
sorry.
up there.
Thank you. My name is Sherry, and thank you.
Do you want to give your address as well?
Sure, 1709 West 72nd Street in Richfield.
And your last name?
Freeman Peters is, I believe, how it's on the form. I had a hyphenated name at the time. I grew up in Richfield, and my children and I came back to Richfield, and I bought my home in August of 1986. That February, the converted oil burner didn't work, and both of my children had asthma, and the furnace was condemned. And that is why HRA, I want to say thank you very much. You saved my children and I to be able to stay in our home. I was hoping to stay in my home the full time, if not more. Circumstances and health injury and disability has made that impossible for me. I know it is a lot to ask, and any help would be greatly appreciated. I wish I had been able to stay in there my 30 years or more. It's just not possible for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone have any questions? Okay.
Madam Chair, may I just some thoughts, because I've been talking to some real estate agents just recently, and the housing market is improving. And my understanding is that in some areas there actually aren't enough homes up available for people to buy, and that there's still a lot in the shadow market that's coming out. If this home was to go, at least it would be back in the market and sold and moving, rather than, it's not, the market's not totally back where it used to be. A lot of people still holding on to homes and stuff, but we'd have a resident in there living and paying real estate taxes and keeping the home up.
Okay.
Just a thought.
I'm sorry, I have one more question of the homeowner. If you would come back, I'm sorry. So I'm still not clear. Are you currently in foreclosure at this point? Are you behind on your payments? What's the status?
I am behind on my payments, and I tried to go through an Obamacare program a year ago last July, and that did not work out. So I went through my mortgage company, and at that time, they had no help for me, and a new program, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, came out late this winter, and my mortgage company called me and said, we think you should do a short sale. So I worked with the mortgage company and a real estate agent to do a short sale, and we got an offer on the house as is, which was paying the mortgage in full. So it was no longer deemed a short sale because the mortgage would be paid off in full. And then the Richfield Bloomington Credit Union has the second home improvement loan, and I believe on the final figures, and I haven't heard back yet from the real estate agent, but I believe that Richfield Bloomington Credit Union will receive the majority of their monies as well for the home equity loan.
Okay.
So it ended up not being a foreclosure and not being a
Short
sale because I got an offer for more money for the house.
Okay. It lists on their past bills.
Yes.
What are the past, what does that refer to?
The past mortgages on the house, I have not made a mortgage payment in a year as of the 6th of August. It would be the loan payments I've been trying to keep up with Richfield Bloomington Credit Union, but many times I have to dip back in at the end of the month and put that money back into my checking account. So it's going kind of back and forth and back and forth. I still have, I've got the utilities paid up as of yesterday, but I still have an outstanding water bill with the city of Richfield that I'm trying to get paid off before the house closes the end of September.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, any discussion? This one doesn't come with a recommendation, if I'm reading it correctly.
That's correct. Well, let me make a motion so we can at least discuss this. I'll just make a motion to approve the proposal made by the owner at 1709 72nd Street West for forgiveness of the $8,249.95 Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant Deferred Loan. That was second.
I'll second.
My discussion point would be, I believe that the homeowner is really trying sincerely to try to get out of the financial disaster that she finds herself in. And moving this home back onto the market and getting it sold would be good for Richfield. I don't know how others feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
John, what happens if this isn't approved? That means the sale can't go through?
You know, I think that is probably a question, more of a question for the homeowner. You know, the worst case scenario for the HRA is that the sale doesn't go through, the house goes into foreclosure, and you lose the money anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another foreclosure.
Yeah.
Typically in a short sale situation, which this really is the equivalent of because there are 3 mortgages on it, and at the end of the day, there's not enough money to pay all of them, at least as I understand it.
Yeah.
Is that in a short sale, the homeowner does not walk away with any cash. That, at least the ones I've been involved in, the bank wants to make sure that they get as much money as they're entitled to. And at this point, we're getting close to zero or probably zero. So I guess my only qualification would be is if the loan is that we would be paid any money at the balance at the end of the whatever's there available. If it turned out there was $8,300, or let's say it's only $8,200 shortfall and we're owed $8,249, we'd collect our $49.
Yeah.
Which then is the equivalent of a short sale. So that would be.
Yeah, I would be comfortable with that if you could
Yeah.
find a way to put it in the form of a motion.
Yeah.
Would
Okay.
entertain an amendment.
Okay, so then I would suggest that, that in addition to the motion already provided, that we will forgive up to $8,249.95, provided that, that that amount is necessary in order to provide, to complete the sale without providing the homeowner with cash proceeds. I mean, that's the gist of it, that's the intent of it. That's not a very good way of saying it, but let me think about it. That we would forgive the balance of the loan necessary to allow the property to close, provided that if there are any excess funds available to the homeowner, that they be paid to the HRA to pay the balance on the loan.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be my amendment.
Be a
Scrap
friendly
the first
amendment.
one.
I will.
Yeah, okay.
I accept the amendment.
Did you have a second? You had a
No, I
second.
don't. Not on the
I'll
amendment.
second.
Okay. Okay.
I have a comment. It's just an interesting convenience that the shortfall happens to be the same amount as the city is owed, and maybe there was a clever real estate agent that was involved.
Well, and so the numbers will shake out the way they shake out. Yeah. So, okay. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, Mr. Devich. Mr. Devich. We keep changing chairs over there.
Right. It's kind of like musical chairs.
Yeah.
Item number 8 is the consideration of resolutions approving the proposed property tax levy for payable 2013 for certification to Hennepin County. And so basically, this is what you're going to be asked is to adopt the attached resolutions for the proposed HRA budget and tax levy and the 2012 revised Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget. And we have a presentation. John, are you making that presentation?
Sir.
Thank you, Chair Sandal. This is a brief presentation. I think it's maybe 10 slides about the budget. Just to provide you an overview on the department, Community Development currently has 16 full-time and 3 part-time employees. The Community Development's total proposed budget for 2013 is approximately $5.9 million. The 2013 proposed budget represents a little over $500,000 increase from the 2012 approved budget. Approximately 20% of Community Development's proposed 2013 budget comes from the city as opposed to the HRA. And the city funds the Inspections Division, which is 8 employees, just under $900,000, and the Planning and Zoning Division, which is 1.5 employees, at a little over $309,000. The remaining 80%, or $4,740,000 of the department's budget is funded through the Richfield HRA. And you guys see me all the time, and some other folks, but I do always like to make you aware that there are a lot of other people behind the scenes. So there are 8.5 full-time equivalent employees that are funded primarily by the HRA, and I'm just going to go through them really quickly. And the percentages I'm going to give you is the amount of their salary and benefits that the HRA pays. So there's me as the director, and I get 70% of my salary and benefits from the HRA. Assistant Director Karen Barton is at 90%. Redevelopment Specialist Christine Costello is at a little over 80%. Housing Specialists Julie Urban and Kate Aitchison, who job share, are 100% funded by the HRA. Accountant Mert Link, who's with us tonight, has almost 90% of her salary funded by the HRA. Jackie Scott, who's the secretary, about 2/3 of her time. And then the Section 8 staff of Lynette Chambers, Michelle Luna, and Cindy Vilde, Cindy's part-time, 100% of their salaries come from the HRA. But I would say that really the HRA acts as a pass-through for those because that money comes from the federal government. And then this last thing is just really of note because it's not primarily funded by the HRA, but a new community development technician is being proposed for the next year's budget. The HRA would be asked to fund a third of that cost, and they would spend their time assisting with either redevelopment projects or housing projects. The overall budget for the HRA is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the overall budget, as I said, for 2012 approved, that you approved last year was $4,202,000. The revised number is $4,896,370. So that is an increase, and we could talk about that. And then for 2013, the proposed is $4,738,000. So it's a little bit of a decrease from the revised. The HRA budget is a lot different than the city's budget in one aspect, and that is the city budget is intended to reflect actual expenditures. There's a lot more known with the city budget. We know when we're going to buy an asphalt truck. We know when we're going to do different things. So much of what the HRA does is speculative. We don't know when the Lindale Garden Center is going to redevelop. We don't know when the lot next to Target's going to redevelop. So it's a lot speculative. And so we budget for the best case scenario, meaning that every project happens. That's never been the case. I would say 2011, we had more projects happen than I can recall ever happening at the same time. And even with that, we only expended 76% of the budget. We kind of go through there and give some historically approved budgets showing that from 2007 to 2010, the amount of money budgeted for the HRA has gone from $4.5 million to a little over $6 million at that point. Just really quickly, I'm just going to read through some of the results, what you get for your money, essentially, in 2011 and 2012 to date. We've acquired 5 substandard homes for future reconstruction of new homes in the New Home in Richfield Rediscovered program. We've allocated approximately $150,000 in CDBG funds to provide up to 5 deferred rehab loans to low-income households. We've rehabbed and sold 5 foreclosed homes using federal NSP program funds. We've provided over $71,000 in transformation home loans to residents, which leveraged over $477,000 in home improvements. We've provided $130,000 in foreclosure prevention I'm trying to remember if FPIP, foreclosure prevention incentive program loans, which returned 6 foreclosed properties to owner occupancy. We established an architectural consulting program, and we provided Section 8 vouchers to 300 families and Kids at Home grants to 28 Richfield families. Kids at Home we don't talk about a lot, but that it has won basically every award that the housing and redevelopment industry could give us. And then we conducted the rental housing study. Specifically for redevelopment, there have been a lot of projects in the past 18 months. Menards, the CVS on Penn, the Andale, which was the former Embers at 77th and Nicollet, and then the Lakes at Lindale has really seen a huge resurgence with the Pizza Luce, Lindale Plaza Apartments, 94 units, which will be ready to be occupied this fall. Lindale Station, which is the fitness, LA Fitness, and the retail, which is a grand total of 65,000 square feet of retail, is near completion. Lindale Garden Center, the rehab is underway, and new development is expected to occur next year. And this is just stunning to me. In this project area, in the last 2 years budget cycle, or year and a half, we've received $3.2 million in grants for planning, acquisition, public improvements, and environmental work from the Met Council in Hennepin County. That's money that's going directly into real estate and projects in Richfield from outside agencies, and that's something we're very proud of. Our key goals for the remainder of this year and for next year for housing is to acquire 5 additional properties for a new home and/or Richfield Rediscovered. To expand the housing program marketing plan, we would like to make sure we're getting the word out to our Hispanic population. We know from demographic, from census information, what percentage of the population in Richfield is Hispanic, and we also know that that same number isn't being achieved with our programs. So there's a gap there we'd like to try to close. We are going to be proposing new initiatives to decision makers on apartment remodeling, on front porch loan program, and on an energy efficiency improvement program. Key goals for redevelopment, keep on keeping on with the Lakes at Lindale. Continued focus on Penn Avenue and Cedar Corridor. Those really had taken a back burner to Lakes at Lindale, and we'd like to get them back front and center again. Actively promote and seek funds for capital improvements. To develop a connectivity plan for the Lakes at Lindale area. What we don't want to see happen in the Lakes at Lindale is for it to be 4 or 5 or 6 developments that aren't linked together in any meaningful way. Continue to pursue the Cedar Point 2 area across from Target and Home Depot. Revisit planning and marketing for the South Cedar Corridor, south of 66th Street. Pursue grant funds for small business improvements. So those are the goals for redevelopment. This is in your budget documents. It just shows what the funding sources are from the HRA budget and how the money is being spent. And we can talk to you more about that if you've got questions. Finance Manager Chris Regis is here. The proposed levy for 2013 is a $46,220 decrease from last year. But it is what's being recommended is the maximum that's allowed under state statutes. And this graph just shows how the HRA has levied in comparison to the maximum. And since 2008, the HRA has levied the maximum available, but that maximum has been decreasing. And as I said, it was brief, but we'd take any questions you might have.
John, would you explain for me and for the folks at home how the maximum levy is determined? What's it based on?
Well, I will ask somebody else to explain that.
Okay.
The maximum levy is based on the pay 2012 market value of the city, and there's a percentage. It's 0.0185%. So it's as the market value has gone down, so has the maximum levy amount that the HRA is allowed to levy, and that even factors in back in pay 2008-2009. They increased the levy from 0.0144 to 0.0185. So as we've seen the market values decrease, we've also seen the levy decrease. And also there is the market value exclusion is factored into that, although the county did give me the number prior to the exclusion amount, and the difference was very minimal. So I'm not sure if he gave me the correct number or not, because I would think it would have been much more significant than what I got or what I calculated.
And when we have the TIF decertified next year, will that give us the opportunity of increasing the levy or not?
No, the TIF will affect the tax capacity. This is market value. There's no tax capacity factored into this levy. So I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I don't know if it's going to affect it because this is based on market value, not tax capacity.
Okay. All right.
So, just to try to summarize this as we look at this, and since we're on the air and people will watch the HRA meeting, it appears as if that we had a 2012 budget, we had a revised budget because we actually had more dollars coming in than we had anticipated. We also had some expenditures that we could use that for and we reviewed some of those. And that's kind of the general sense of that. And in actuality, what we're bringing in, we're not even spending all of that. It is proposed.
Okay.
And I think that's and I'm sure that we'll put the slide presentation up online for folks to see anyway. So please take a chance to go through this because this is actually this little budget sheet. It's very good. You can really see what's happening here. Besides on what's happening from the funding sources and then the expenditures from the HRA budget. It's very self-explanatory. Very very
And
nice.
just so you know, a big part of the bump from what was approved for 2012 and what's being proposed as a revised 2012 number isn't so much an increase in how much we're seeking to spend, it's a timing issue.
Yep.
There was proceeds from what's called the bonds of 1996 that we'd been projecting to pay out in the future. It's, working with Ellers and Associates and with our legal staff, we've determined it's more advantageous for us to spend those funds sooner rather than later. So it's not that we're spending more money than we had anticipated. It's just a matter of timing.
Okay. I would move to adopt the attached resolution approving the 2013 proposed Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget and tax levy and 2012 revised Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget.
I'll second it.
And any comments?
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Certainly, go ahead.
I just have a couple questions. One is on page 42 and 45 and 46 of the budget, it talks about HAP payments. And is it right that we run a deficit on those programs? Do we have, it looks like we have $150,000 coming in on an administrative fee, and our labor is $193,000.
Yes, the HAP program is commonly known as Section 8, and we are running a deficit. We have been running a deficit for, since I came aboard. Since I've come aboard, the direction to the Section 8 staff, first of all, there was a sizable cash balance, so that's where the deficit is pulling from. But my direction to staff is to consistently reduce the deficit, and so we're doing everything we can to trim that. At some point in time, and I do feel confident that we've done everything we can to trim that the program just costs more to run than we receive from the federal government. So at some point in time, we would have to make a decision if we spend down our surplus that's sitting there, that we either want to not do the Section 8 program anymore because it would cost us money, and so we would give that to what's called Metro Section 8 or Hennepin County or somebody else to administer for us, or we would decide that there's value to us doing it internally, and we'd have to find some funding source. But we're doing everything we can to minimize that.
Can you give me some idea what we consider the value of running our own program? What are the benefits that we get from, as opposed to having it in Hennepin County?
Control. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Communities that don't run their own program, they don't have as much of a say over the process for, let's say, getting people off the program that are not utilizing it like it should be utilized, or making programming decisions. So it's really a control issue.
We also work with landlords and that sort of thing too, don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
And we are very diligent. Our staff is very diligent in making sure that anybody that receives a Section 8 voucher is providing us with all the proper information, and we spend a great deal of time, investigating that. And we don't feel that that another party would have our own self-interests in mind the same way we do.
Okay. I have one other question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
On page 33, the new home program, you have stated as a goal to do 6 to 8 affordable or explore doing them apartments on that site on 77th. And I personally, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a year ago we asked that we would get our budget before the month that we were supposed to approve it. And I think we did. We got a chance to look at it, didn't we, a month ahead of time?
Yes.
I don't remember.
I believe we did. We got it.
So this would be something I would raise in the interim before we had to vote on it, but I still think that we should be, I know we had a CBDG funding on that, but I still think that we should be exploring with the existing apartment owners whether or not we could partner with them on that. The ones in the major apartment next door, partner with them on redevelopment with them as a portion of their property or something where we could wrap, maybe look at some way of getting 2- and 3-bedroom apartments built there and wrap some affordables into it. I still very much disagree with the idea of putting just a few units of affordable, 100% of them in that spot.
How about we agree to this, that I don't think we should do anything on that site until the housing vision has progressed. And then we'll come back and revisit this site.
That's okay with me. I hate to say we should stop doing everything until we get our study done, but I did want to express that objection to that as a goal in the budget.
Right, and obviously if a developer were to come to us and say, we'd like to do something here, we'd bring that to your attention. But absent that, I think waiting wouldn't be the worst thing, and we hope that this housing vision process goes fairly quickly.
Okay, any other comments?
I have a comment. I in my previous term on the HRA, maybe 3-4 years ago, when I looked at the budget, it was on a disc, and I think I can thank Commissioner Quam, but I don't know. I don't want to know how much these things cost.
It's, I can show you in the budget. It's on page.
Oh, there. I still think it's worth it when it's a $500,000 budget to be able to understand it.
Smaller stuff on CDs is applicable though sometimes, I think. But yes.
And I do appreciate it. Thank you.
I think Finance Manager Regis is owed the thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm certainly appreciative. Much easier to read than sitting in front of my computer. Okay, we have do we have a motion?
Yes.
We have a motion in front of us to adopt the HRA budget. Any further discussion?
With the understanding that we arrived at on the item on 77th Street.
76th Street, actually.
Or 76th, yes.
Yeah.
My vote will be qualified by that, but
All right.
you can call the vote.
All right. I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. And do we have another executive director's report?
Chair Sandall, members of the HRA, I really don't have a specific report.
Okay. And then claims and payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And I skipped over item number 9, HRA discussion items. Was there anything else?
Thank you.
Anyone?
Could we just, yes, did you want to go first?
I would be happy to.
Go for it.
Thank you. I just want to observe that Pizza Luce is open, and I've been there, and it's attracting a full house and a full parking lot every single night.
And the streets.
And the streets, which we might need to look at some point, especially with respect to the post office. But it's all full of young families, like we learned about in our home residency in the study session. You've got their little kids in there. They got lots of booster chairs and high chairs, and the grandparents come. I can vouch for that.
Yep.
And it seems to be a very welcome and good addition to the community. We're happy to see it.
That's very good. I just wanted to know if we had an update on the houses across from the Target and Home Depot. I know we were moving forward with that, and is there any movement at all that you can report on?
Commissioner Gotell, members of the HRA, we're working our way through. The first thing that has to happen is we have to have an agreement with the other parties, and one of them is the Minnehaha Watershed District, and we were working on that today. Julie Eddington and I were on a couple of different conference calls today working on that, and hope to have that in front of the Watershed District on September early 5th, 4th, 7th, something like that. And so are we moving ahead? We're making some progress. It's slow, but we are making progress, and hopefully we'll have something positive to report coming up in the next few weeks.
Are the homeowners mostly amenable to moving forward as well?
You know, I didn't talk to them. I wasn't at those
Okay.
meetings. My understanding was that there were several of them that were amenable to moving ahead. I don't know about how, whether that it was all of them or not. I think there were a number they didn't get a hold of.
Yeah.
Steve, as long as you open the door, why is the watershed involved? Or how?
Commissioner Gepner, that's a very short question with a very long answer. It's because all of the things we're working on the Taft Legion project, it involves the DNR, it involves the city of Richfield, it involves the Minnehaha Watershed District. Because for one thing, you're dealing with stormwater runoff, and actually the Taft Lake, which would be enlarged as part of this process, is kind of the receiving end of a lot of water runoff that comes through Richfield, through Legion Lake, and I think works its way over to Taft. And then ultimately from Taft, I think it even goes across into the lakes north and into Minneapolis. But so everyone's kind of partnering on this, and maybe if you have more specifics on exactly the part that Minnehaha Watershed District plays in it, you're welcome to jump in.
The city and the watershed are working cooperatively to improve the storm sewer utility in this area at the same time that the street is widened and all of the other amenities that are being built in the area are done. So all of these agreements between the city and the watershed need to be solidified as we move forward before all of the agreements with the homeowners can be finalized as well.
Okay. Any further discussion items? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you.